they would have no real reason to idolize Jesus or to really include him in their scriptures. And so for him to have been recorded in a scripture at around the same time is very odd.
In 115 AD, which is extraordinary. The characters that he bears, born of a virgin, his name is Isa Messiah, calls himself the Son of God, persecuted in a land in the West, and migrated. I mean, there's only one guy in history who bears those marks, and that is Jesus.
Can I just answer that question, actually, if you don't mind? If you think about it, these phenomena where people see things, like, for example, people see Jesus, right? You notice it's only Christians who actually see Jesus, in Spain or somewhere else, right? No, it's never reported to have been seen by the American Indians or by the Aborigines or by, the people in China. So it's only people who have a love and association with them that is understandable. But for someone else in a completely different country, who's a king of that country, for that to have actually been recorded, you can't say that was an apparition, right? That wasn't an apparition because he has no concept as to who this person might be, right? So I think that's really the answer. One is a psychological phenomena, the other one is a historical event which is actually recorded.
Are there any other?
Yes. I think we have to. We've been told to leave.
Well, we've got
off the break quite quickly, and we've already won over.
I think we've got another 15. We've got another 15 minutes. There we are. Yeah.
Okay.
But of course, if anybody wants to leave, please don't let me stop.
Any other questions?
Are there any other questions?
It was sorry.
No, it's fine. Oh, okay, I know there are a few. I know where they are. Okay.
Not that I know much about this, but I do listen to Radio 4. Okay, so there was a program the other day about ancient scrolls that were found in St. Catherine's of Sinai, which predate a lot of the early versions of the Bible, where they have discrepancies that have been found. And one of the stories is that when he died, his tomb disappeared, his body disappeared from the tomb. And that's it, that's where that particular gospel ends. And there's no mention of resurrection. And he just dies, he's taken down from the cross, he disappears from
Like
the
I
tomb.
said, the Ascension doesn't feature in any gospels prior to the 2nd century, prior to over 200 AD. I think there was another question behind you.
Yes, I was going to ask, do you really believe that a person who was tortured and then was bleeding for 6 hours at least was cured by some herbs, first of all? Yeah, second of all, in that letter you cited, it mentions John the Baptist. And John the Baptist was killed by Herod a few months before the crucifixion. And you can find that information in the writings. Does it or not?
Yeah, sorry.
I thought you mentioned John the Baptist.
I made a mistake, sorry. It's John the Apostle, my apologies.
Okay, that's fine.
Because it doesn't say John the Baptist in there, who was I always thought, because I was wondering whether people who know who John was. So I thought,
So he was John the Baptist.
couldn't have been John the Baptist then.
Because he died before, yeah.
With respect to your first question, there are, in this documentary, if you watch it on YouTube, you'll find they talk about the possibility of survival of crucifixion, and there was an incident of Josephus, who was I think he was not Jewish. I don't think he was Jewish. He was
A Roman historian.
He was a Roman historian. He was Jewish, but he was a Roman historian.
Yeah.
It's a great lecture by me, isn't it? Asking the audience. When he went to Africa, he saw that he went to a colony in Africa, which was the Romans, and he saw that 3 of his friends were hanging by cross. And he asked for the head of the Roman guards there to take them down. And 2 of them, they were all administered medical care immediately. And 2 of them died, but 1 of them survived. And it is often known that people died in the heat of the African summer. People died after 8 or 9 hours. People died only after 8 or 9 days on the cross. So for him to be on the cross for 6 hours. Now, the question is, was he bleeding for 6 hours continuously? First of all, he wasn't bleeding for 6 hours.
But he was tortured before, right?
He was flogged and imprisoned, yes. But the fact of the matter is, Pilate himself, who knew of this because he himself had ordered it, he still exclaimed surprise. And he said, "What? Already dead?"
Bearing in mind that Pilate is used to crucifying a man.
And he knows how
long it takes a young man to die.
All of their prisoners would have gone through that before crucifixion.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact of the matter is, when you have when you have your Sir Doctor can tell you here perhaps, when you have spikes driven through your hands, the internals, I think it talks about it in that book, the internal, because of the pressure of it, it prevents blood from actually going into your hands, and so it's not, you don't get a lot of blood loss.
It's basically tamponades the wound, if it's done correctly. Because the whole point of crucifixion wasn't to kill the person quickly. The whole point of crucifixion was that the person would literally hang there for days and days, and then eventually die of kind of collapsed lungs, starvation, dehydration.
And
It was an extremely painful death. That was the whole point. It wasn't to kill them quickly.
the last point with respect to healing herbs. Well, you know what? You know, the medicines we have today are taken from those healing herbs and extracted and things like that. So it's not a question of healing herbs or just a few healing herbs. Whatever was to happen, perhaps they used the correct plant. I mean, these plants have been known to have excellent medicinal qualities. So I don't quite know how to answer that, but apart from the fact that yes, I suppose those healing herbs work. And that's cited by the fact that people in previous crucifixions have survived after 7 days.
Gary, you have a question here.
Sorry.
Got a question here.
I'll get back to you. Sorry, who's
Do you consider that Jesus could have been simulating the death, controlling his body,
controlling his body?
or is it just, for your opinion, has survived? Has been survived?
In my opinion, it's simply survival. I don't know what you mean by. Do you mean by controlling the body in terms of he had a fantastic amount of control on his body?
Not that, but everything was actually simulating, controlling the body.
So what, that he was actually it was still being inflicted upon him, but he was controlling his body so as to survive.
Yeah.
Well, I expect that. Well, that would imply that every person has control over their body when they're being put on the cross. Now that depends upon your personal view. In my personal view, he was pretty much controlling it as far best as he could because he wanted to stay alive, but that's irrelevant. You know, sometimes